Welcome, Jamie Ramsay. How are you doing?
I'm very well, very well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You just mentioned to me you've just come back from a run. What?
It was a very short run. I'm working out with my brother tonight, so I'm just trying to get in shape because he's super CrossFit and I'm super running. I can't do what he does, so I'm trying to warm up so I can take him on in the gym later. So,
Amazing.
but I'm at the beginning stages of a training regime, which will take me from now till the 1st of July. So I'm just
Amazing.
kind of building up the legs and that kind of stuff. So.
So just tell me where you are, like from the beginning, kind of like where before you started doing these crazy distances, where were you at? Were you running then? What sort of distances were you doing?
Yeah, I think before I started properly adventuring and properly running, I think I did very much the same kind of route that most people do. I had a very happy upbringing, then I went to school and then I went to university. And I kind of done a bit of running through that, like cross country running at school, and then it kind of as you hit university and you meet kind of girls and beer, you kind of that dies off a bit. Then I kind of ended up in London working in a city job, and then it was kind of like going out with the boys and all this kind of stuff. And then came the drunken afternoon in the pub where someone said, "Let's do a marathon." And we all agreed to go to do this was 2004, I think. So that was the Stockholm Marathon. And that kind of got me back into running again, kind of properly. And obviously trained, did the marathon, and then did the I will never do that ever again afterwards. And 2 years later, I was back doing another marathon. And I think that was the point where I think for a lot of people, you get addicted to the kind of the feeling of completing a run, or you train for it's like the run's only the small part. That's just the end bit, but the kind of training cycle and everything you go through to get to an event. And I kind of got triggered by that. So then I started doing other things. So I'd done the 5Ks, the 10Ks. Then I moved up to the marathons. Then I started doing things like half Ironman and 10K swims and marathons in safari parks. And it was this like eternal kind of drive to find the next high from running. And but at the same time, there was a kind of the real life behind it, which was I was working in a job which I had no passion for and was just grinding away every day and kind of didn't feel fulfilled or happy or satisfied with that part of my life. So I was kind of leaning on the running and the going to the gym slightly obsessively. And then on top of that was basically going to the pub a lot and getting pissed. And it was a kind of weird mix of being working, training, and boozing that didn't really go very well together. And those things don't end up leaving you in a very kind of balanced mental state. So I was just kind of crying. I just wasn't happy. So um, I signed up for, I wanted to do one big, like at this stage, I want to do one big adventure. This was 2013. And I signed up for the Jungle Marathon, which was this one in Vietnam. It was going to be the first installment, 6 days, 240 kilometers, carry all your stuff through the jungle. And I kind of went, yep, that's what I'll do. That'll be my kind of crowning thing. I didn't want to do the Marathon des Sables or anything because just too many people were doing it. And I remember training for it, and I got really excited, and I started raising money. I started buying all the kit. I bought my ticket, all that kind of stuff, and then they cancelled the event. And I was just like, what? Like I've told everyone I'm doing this. I've taken their money, and now you just pulled the rug out from under me. And they were like, "Oh, don't worry, you can buy it. We'll get you a place at the Gobi March. You just have to fly to China." I was like, "I don't have 2,000 quid just to go and fly." Um, because I'm very much on the belief if you're raising money, the money all goes to charity. You pay for everything else yourself. So I kind of just thought, kind of felt dejected about the whole thing. And then something trigged in my brain, and I went, wait a minute, what's to stop you going to Vietnam anyway, running 240 kilometers? So I kind of changed the parameters slightly. I running backpack, which was ultra light for the event, suddenly had flip flops and books and swimming shorts and all the stuff I needed for the holiday that I'd planned after. I flew to Da Nang in the north of Vietnam and then just ran for 6 days by myself, having never done anything like that before. Finding somewhere to sleep every night, nothing planned. And I got to the end of that and I had this little moment of I feel happy, I feel proud, I like myself, I've achieved something. I've done it by myself without the kind of infrastructure of an event around me. And I'd love to say that's where I went, boom, I'm going to become an adventurer. But it didn't. I went back, got back into the grind of work, got consumed back into what society wants, what I felt society wanted me to do. And then I kind of started obsessing about the gym again and drinking and all this kind of stuff until I got to November 2013 and thought, I just had a moment and went, I can't carry on like this. This is unhealthy. It's spiraling in the wrong direction. I'm not happy. I need to make a change. And that was the moment when I thought back, when was the last time I was happy, motivated, proud of myself? And it was running the Vietnam run. And I was that feeling I had at the end. I was like, I want that to be the central point of my life. I want that to be what I work towards, rather than, I'm not a money person. I don't care about fancy cars or nice clothes or fancy restaurants. I just want to have like a fun life. And so I was going to kind of write, let's just change all this. And that's how I came to do this ridiculously long run, which was stupidly my first proper adventure. Like, I'm never going to get that high again, ever. I keep thinking every time I'm looking at adventures, like, it's not going to be running the Americas, but it was still, it propelled me into it was like a kind of just really harsh way of learning how to do adventure and learn about yourself, which was awesome. So,
Did you have kind of like a moment of clarity when you kind of were in the Americas and you were like, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is, or are you very kind of focused all the way through it?
um, well, in all honesty, when I stood on day one with my baby stroller in the middle of Vancouver, looking at this road, thinking, Christ, it's 17,000 kilometers. At that point, I thought it was 18,000, but 17,000 kilometers to Buenos Aires. I didn't even know where I was sleeping that night. I didn't have any fuel for my camping stove. I'd never set my tent up before. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And then, but it was like kind of before I left, there were so many people. And before you take on anything big, it's just human nature. People will tell you can't do something. And what I've learned through all my adventures is people will tell you you can't do something that they don't think they can do. And if they don't think they can do it, why should you be able to do it, kind of thing. So projecting their negativity onto you. So as I was standing at the beginning, all these people saying you can't run through Quito, it's 3,000 meters. You can't run across the Atacama Desert. How are you going to get around the Darien Gap? You can't run across the Andes at 4,800 meters. And I think when I'd always had those moments in the back of my head from day one going, if ever it gets hard, these are all the things that you have to be able to do in the future. So plan to get a learning experience out of every single day that will help you overcome those obstacles. So when I was standing at 4,830 meters with a baby stroller in the middle of the Andes by myself, that was the moment when I was like, oh, wow, like I thought I could do this much stuff, but now I can do so much more because I've pushed all these boundaries. And it's such a cliched thing, but like the circle of what we think we're capable of, you start pushing that boundary, the circle gets bigger. But it really was. It was like I could actually pretty much do anything now. Like if I know that there's a process you can go through which will allow you to do anything, and you may not be able to do it tomorrow, but if you have the right mindset and the right dedication, you can do anything. It just takes time, and it's how much do you want it. So when I was about 13,000 kilometers maybe. And I was thinking, that was when my brain started thinking, right, I really want to carry on doing this, but I have no money, nowhere to live. Actually, I just got nothing apart from this desire to carry on adventuring. And that's when my brain just started thinking up stuff and like, we're going to carry on doing this.
You kind of already touched on it, but like, what do you do to stay motivated for that many days?
I think that's the first thing is you don't think there's another 10,000 to go. That's the worst thing you can do. Never think that far ahead. And I think I'd kind of, the way I'd in my head subconsciously divided up the adventure was quit your job, get to the start line, run to the length of the USA, run to the end of Mexico, I mean, Central America, run to Buenos Aires. So any of those would be success points. So I could leave at any point with my head held high. Like running the length of the USA is 2,900 kilometers. Like that's awesome. Like you can go home proud and say like I didn't make it all the way. And because there's lots of people I hear talking about doing big ventures and they go, oh, I was going to do this thing, but I didn't have enough money. That's the worst excuse I've ever heard. Like I didn't have enough money. If you've got enough money to do a little bit, you just go and do it. And then on the motivation thing, I have this line which is on my website, which is just when I get tired or when I get stuck, it's like I would just sit down on the side of the road and I think about the life I lived in London the job I had that I hated. And it wasn't a bad job, it's just it wasn't the right job for me. And the drinking and the obsessiveness about stuff. And I was like, you made a choice to be here. If you don't want to be here, you have to go back there. So just get up and carry on. And that's basically what I told myself every day. And you get to this point where you realize that you will have hard moments every single day, but someone will do something nice every single day. And it does happen. Like people would stop and just take a photo or chat to you, or a policeman would give you some money for lunch, or someone would take you into their house. There would always be something. I got a tweet by Stephen Fry one day, and that was just like, oh my God, Stephen Fry. I was in the middle of a desert in Peru, and he tweeted me, and I was just like, this is insane. Like, so you learn to know that there's something positive is going to be happening every day, and you just have to look for it, rather than dwelling on the negativity, because that's never going to get you any further forward.
That's so inspiring. What over all your adventures, so it's gonna have to think, but what is the three biggest lessons you think you've learned through all of your running?
The main one is don't. So quite often people will look at an adventure and they'll think, down the line I have to do this, I can't do that, so I'm not going to do it. And that obstacle that comes in the future, don't let that be the thing to put you off, because you've got time, and every single day or hour or whatever it is, the time scale you've got, you can think and plan and learn and get into a position that you will be the best, in your best position to overcome that. So I know when I was standing in Vancouver thinking of the Andes, like everyone was telling me I couldn't do it because I was there. But when I got to the Andes, I realized I was in the best position of any human being in the world to run across the Andes, because I'd spent the last year and a bit pushing this baby stroller every single day, going up hills, going down hills, learning new skills, learning what goes wrong, learning how to make my stroller lighter, so all the things I did made me able to achieve that. So it's just like, yeah, don't let obstacles in the future stop you. Number two, don't limit yourself. So one of the things I kind of naively did at the beginning of running Americas was like, I'm going to run 30 kilometers for 5 days and take 2 days off. And that was, someone told me the other day, like, so basically we're thinking like it's work. So you're doing 5 days work, you have a weekend. And I was saying 30 kilometers every day. That means I would have run 150 kilometers a week, which is all I would run, because that's all I set myself to do. What I learned quickly was that body, some days I was running 60, 70 kilometers a day, and other days I'd run 25, 30 kilometers, but not having a rigid kind of program in place allowed me the ability to flourish. So when I was starting with my short runs at the beginning, my last 28 days of the Running Americas adventure, I ran 58 kilometers every single day for 28 days without a break. Like if I'd kept that mindset of planning everything, in terms of distances, then I would have not been able to do that. I wouldn't be able to push myself, and I wouldn't have been able to learn that I'm capable of that. So never restrict yourself. Don't plan. Like obviously be sensible. Like all these people, I see people planning adventures, and I understand where we get it from, because when I was pre-adventure, you go to these lectures and you get these big grand people saying, this is the adventure I did. It took me months to plan it. It took me this much money. It took me all these special logistical things. And you're sitting there as an audience member, and they're basically saying to you, you can't do this because you're not me, which is the most ridiculous thing in the entire world. Because when I started planning running the Americas, I was like, what do I plan? I was like, right, I get a baby stroller. I need a tent, a cooker, some running shoes. I need a route. What else do I do? The only thing left after that is planning minutiae, which is like, there's a waterfall here, and then you start looking up the waterfall, then you look up the churches. You're already doing the adventure before you've left on the adventure. So when you're actually doing the adventure, you already know what's around the corner, which takes away the whole unknown of an adventure. So just make sure you have your safety in place, you have the best kit you can possibly have, and the best preparation, but let the adventure be itself. Just have an A and a B and then just experience it. You'll miss stuff, but you'll experience stuff that other people don't get to do. And that's, I think, a really important thing about adventuring, because it should be like, I probably should say this, I don't do firsts, I don't do records, I don't do any of my adventures for any sort of kind of recognition. I do it because I love doing it. and that's the only reason I want to do it. So it's expensive way of doing it because you don't get paid, but you kind of you get to enjoy the essence of why you go out into nature, and you're doing it on your own terms for your own kind of reward.
How many, like you just mentioned kit, like how many pairs of shoes do you go through and how do you kind of navigate your kit, and do you basically wear it till completion and it's completely dead? Or, and nutrition wise, you mentioned you like find waterfalls and churches, but food wise, like how are you doing these amazing lengths, like through Iceland? How are you going through these amazing kind of barren states with limited amount of food and water?
Well, on the kit thing, I would definitely say when I look at what I packed naively on Adventure One and what I pack now, the difference is shocking. Like I was taking like super dry hoodies and massive Trangia metal cookers and just the most ridiculous amount of stuff that I was pushing every day. Now I have the best kit, and it's because I've researched it. I've asked advice. I'm very lucky to be an ambassador for Cotswold Outdoor, so like I can get advice on having the best backpacks, the best shoes, the best sleeping mats and tents. And the journey I've taken has cost a lot of money because I've basically I'm Scottish, and I'm not saying anything about Scottish people, but I always want to go for the deal rather than the piece of kit that's best for what I'm doing. So I'm like, kind of like, oh yeah, I'll buy this cheap sleeping mat, and then you sleep on it, and you're like, this is why it's sleep cheap because it's really heavy and it doesn't work. So then you end up with a thermarest that works well. So when it comes to kit, I would say you absolutely have to. I'd take the time, check out all the adventurers out there: Sean Conway, Mark Beaumont's, Jenny Graham's, Jenny Tufts. Go and watch, look what they're using because they've put in the time to research it. Go and ask in shops and get advice. But the better your kit is, the better you'll sleep, the better you'll recover, the more you'll enjoy your adventure. And like everyone looks at my kit bag's normally a bit bigger than most people, but my thought process is if I'm running across Iceland, I'm spending more time in my tent than I am running. So surely I should prioritize that time to be as productive as possible, not just as light as possible when I'm running. So I always go slightly heavier and have the best kit. Food is it's difficult, and the problem that I think a lot of people will when they're training for these big long things put in this like set routine of this is what I'm going to eat and have this much calories and have this much protein and this much blah blah blah, and you have all these vitamins. That you don't have that when you're on these adventures, and if you get your body used to just doing that, it's going to expect that, and suddenly you're taking that away for it. So I'm kind of quite casual with my diet. And lucky I can go into a pub, have a pint and a burger, and then go for a run. Like my body will allow me to do that. Some people can't, so that's a little bit harder. But when you're running across like Iceland and suddenly you find a restaurant, you will go like I will go in and eat absolutely everything I can possibly eat, just because that will fuel me for a couple of days, and then I'll still have my kind of little bags of porridge, my coffee, my kind of nuts or uh, little protein bars or dehydrated meals, that kind of stuff. But it's just you have to have the rough idea of where you can get food, where you can get water, and then you just have to just take on whatever you can. I remember running across Iceland. I got to a river crossing. This car came the other way, and the guy just lobbed a beer right at me, and I was like, all right, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, but these are calories. So I just opened it, drank it, and just, I was not going to run with the can. So it's just like take any calories you can possibly get. But that's kind of the unknown is why you do it. It's like, where am I going to get the food? Am I going to feel kind of hungry for a while? Yeah, go with it. Just roll it, enjoy it. Because if it's easy and it's not fun, like it really isn't fun. And I watch my videos, me going, oh my god, complaining, complaining, complaining. And then when I get to the end of the adventure, it's like if I didn't have any of that complaining, there would be no point in doing the adventure.
Have you ever been afraid on any of your adventures, like for your life? Has anything ever happened and you've been like, oh, that was dangerous, but you haven't noticed it until like kind of hindsight?
There's been a couple of moments. Even my parents have said to me, like, Jamie, you've done like 30 adventures. There's never been any jeopardy. You always get to the end and you never nearly die. Like, can you not be taking like, can not something happen to you just to add a lot? And I'm like, yeah, well, if you plan an adventure properly, you are not going to be in danger. If you have the right skills, you know what you're doing. You put yourself like when I was running the Americas, what was it? Don't get drunk, don't do drugs, don't sleep with local women, don't run at night. They were my rules, and if you stick to them, you ain't going to get into trouble. But have been 2 times running the Americas, Satura Desert. I was approaching this 200-kilometer stretch of desert from Chipura to Chiclayo, I think it was, or the other way around. And just as I was about to arrive, got an email from some cyclists who said, Jamie, watch out. We did this stretch. We got held up at gunpoint and we got robbed and they stole our bikes and they shot at us as we tried to run away. Don't run this road. I then looked at the map and it was the only road. Like there was no option. I had to run this road. And as I was leaving the town, all the like locals were saying like, don't run that road. That's like, it's really dangerous. You'll die. And I was like, oh my God, this is all slightly harrowing. And then there were like mothers were starting to do this across, like run their finger across their throat. And I was like, oh my God. And that was the first time I was running thinking, yeah, this is stupid. And it's selfish. It's not stupid, it's selfish. Because if I die, I'm come to terms with that. I know where I am. I know what I'm doing. It's got an element of risk. But it was the first time I thought, this is not fair on my parents. It's not fair on my sisters. Not fair on loved ones back home. Yeah, this is selfish. And I did feel kind of apprehensive. But then I got to a crossing. I spoke to some policemen. They told me it was fine. I carried on running. 30 minutes later, they suddenly reappeared and said, maybe it's not actually that fine. We're going to give you a police escort. So I kind of luckily got looked after on that stretch until they deserted me and just left me in the desert. But that's another story. And then the other time, came with just being tired, and I was doing the Hayduke Trail, kind of hiking it, and I'd been hiking. I did 28 miles, the 27 miles going down a river, the Escalante River, jumping in the river, walking down the river, jumping out with a massive backpack, and I was tired and tired. And I got to this last bit where there was a platform and then a kind of sloped rock. And I just looked at it going, I have to either go across that or I have to go all the way back. And something in my brain just said, just run. And I just ran with my backpack across this thing and started slipping, just started running quicker. And I grabbed onto the other side. And then I looked back and I just was like, okay, that was stupid. You acted emotionally, not rationally there. That was just, you wanted to get across because you're tired, you're drained, you're not thinking properly. So yeah, that was a bit of a, and that was probably the only 2 moments I can think of.
It's like a movie, that running across the running across and grabbing on with your fingertips. It's like out of something from Indiana Jones.
But it's weird. You kind of think there's like there was the time that I peed blood because I was running too much. There was the time when I got hit by a motorbike. There's time, but you kind of those become kind of normal. So you don't really and it's really hard because you know you can sit there and grandiose things, or you as an adventurer, you just have to normalize everything. And if you normalize everything, then that's allows you to carry on. And what other adventurers are better at than me is unnormalizing it when they get back and then making it all sound like they nearly died. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just want to carry on thinking this is normal and kind of safe and let's carry on. So yeah, it's good fun though.
In a different direction then, what have been some of your favorite moments out in your trips? Some of the things you've seen that you're like, I'm so kind of blessed to be able to see this right now.
So the best one was cycling across the salt flats of Uni in Bolivia in 2017. I'd never bike packed before, so I just sourced a bike, got some panniers, jumped on an aeroplane, flew to Sao Paulo, and then cycled across South America to La Paz. And in my head, I was always like, woohoo, we're going to the salt flats. And I remembered all the pictures of the whiteness and, people cycling their bikes naked and all these kind of fun stuff. And I was like, I'm going to go and do all that. And then this is where the no planning thing kind of comes a bit loose. So I kind of got close to Uni and everyone was like, where are you going? I was like, I'm going to salt flats. And they were like, well, you can't. I was like, what do you mean you can't? Like, well, it's flooded. So what do you mean it's flooded? It's like, it's a wet season. I was like, there's a wet season? No one told me there was a wet season. So I kind of kept going and everyone was like, no, you can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I asked drivers and tour guides and hotels and everyone was like, no, no. I met some cyclists. They were like, impossible. I was like, oh my God. So I arrived at the salt flats of Uni and just as I was getting there was this massive 4x4 like monster truck with German adventurers in it coming off the salt flat. And I was like, guys, do you think I could cycle across this? And we're talking like it was a 70-kilometer cycle to where I needed an island in the middle I needed to get to. And the guy was like, yeah, you'll be fine. And I was like, right, one person said it. We're on. This is all systems go. We're doing this. And then I arrived at the edge, and it was just basically I arrived at what was a lake. It was just, and it was a 10,000 kilometer squared lake, and it's the largest salt flat in the world. But then, because it's flooded, it became like the largest mirror in the world. It was just the sky mirrored in the water. And I was sitting on my bike, and this guy came up and he goes, "Have you got a map?" And I was like, "No." He said, "You got GPS?" And I was like, "No." "Do you know where you're going?" "There's an island." And then he goes, "This is huge, right? There's a volcano right the other side. You might just see the top of it. Follow that 70 kilometers and you should get to the island." I was like, "Woo!" And then just cycled out, leaving all the cars and people behind into this beautiful mirror in this surreal world. I was just cycling across, and then I kind of just got taken away in this like beauty, and just cycled for 4 or 5 hours, and then found this little island. And I can remember the feeling of achievement. Like everyone has said no, 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 and then I was there, and I kind of walked onto the island. Little old lady who ran the hostel there in the summer. She was just like, "Where did you come from?" I was like, "I cycled here." She was like, "It's impossible. Like you didn't." And I was like, "Yeah, well, I'm here." So that was one of the most beautiful. Running over the Andes, which I've talked about a few times, that was like running on this, like the moon. It was just insane. And it was one of those, it was brilliant because I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just running, pushing this pram. Sun was out. As soon as that sun hit, that went behind the mountains, it plummeted to -10. And I was running in t-shirts and shorts, putting on every single piece of clothing I have, like crawling into my tent, everything freezing. Because I knew I only had one night. I bought one pair of thick socks to try and get me through it. But the beauty of it made the horror of the cold kind of worthwhile. And then like just everywhere. I go all the adventures I plan because I want to see the beauty. So Iceland, amazing. The three peaks in the UK, just getting to run even stuff that everyone does, like the West Highland Way. Absolutely loved that. Just loved every. I did it the wrong way around because I went from Fort William to Glasgow on that bit. So you start off in utter beauty and then you end up in Glasgow, and you're like, yeah, I can see why everyone does it the other way. But then, yeah, cycling across Australia, the emptiness, it's amazing. Yeah,
It's
it's
all
all
amazing.
amazing every
It's all
day.
amazing.
Just being outside, just being outdoors every day is amazing. So,
You're inspiring me just from talking, but how do you hope to inspire others to kind of get out and, do adventures, or even just go outside and get off the phones and exercise?
well, it's one of those things like with Cotswold Outdoor, they've got this Save the Outdoor campaign, which is like trying to teach people how to be more responsible in the countryside. And it's something that we do need to work at. But I kind of, and you're saying, how do we get people outside? When I go out into these wonderful places in the UK and I see all these people, I'm like, oh my God, all these people in the outdoors, this is horrible. And then I'm like, no, these people would be at home playing PlayStations or in the pub. It's good that they're out there. But what we've got to try and do is, I would say, if you're trying to get into the countryside, go look for different places because everyone's going to Snowdonia, everyone's going to Ben Nevis, everyone's going to the Lake District, everyone's going to all these iconic places. And what we're doing is putting too much stress on these places. But also, when you go there, you're like, oh my God, there's all these people here. So you're not having the best time when you're there. So go and just start off in your backyard, go out and see, go and find a small, look up the second highest mountain in Wales, go and climb that one. But like, I think I've learned over the years, I've been flying all around the world trying to find these amazing adventures. And in the last couple of years, I've realized, wait a minute, our own back door is epic. Like Scotland is amazing. Wales is like just love it. And Peak District, I just absolutely love the Peak District. I live down in the southwest of France. I'm going to do more adventuring in the Pyrenees because like it's like a short flight from the UK to get down there. It's a stunningly beautiful place. So I'd say start local, make sure you have the best kit possible, and then just try and push yourself a little bit further every day. And if you get into that kind of routine of just like surprising yourself just a little bit every day, then you'll find that you'll be pushing yourself a bit more. You're like, I didn't know I could get to the top of that hill. So what's next? I'm going to learn how to be better at descents. That will get me to this. And I'm going to do one night camp. And if you've never camped out, just camp in your back garden. And if you don't like it, you come back in, you can change what was wrong. And like, I'm about to do an adventure. My bedroom, one of my bedrooms is like 4 degrees. So I'm going to start sleeping in there just to test my kit. So I make the right choices for my adventures going forward. So just play. It's about playing. being outside, it's about playing, it's about being in touch with nature. And there are great communities out there you can join if you don't want to do it solo. Like, I love being by myself, but if you're scared, that there are people who are in the exact same position as you. And there's like, I see in like Kendal Mountain Festival, like videos about kind of Muslim ladies getting together and going hiking, or like wild water swimming and all that kind of stuff. So there are groups out there who can help you get into what you want to do. But I would say, of all the adventuring I've done, and why I'm going back to it this year, trail running is, it's the one that will make you feel most alive, I think.
Well, thank you very much for coming on with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. And I wish you
Thank
all
you
the
very
luck with
much.
your adventures in the future.
Amazing. Thank you.